It's so hard. Like there's just so many good guys, good men. So and I think you have to be willing to look for it.
There's a point where there's certain things that I won't make excuses for. I won't condone certain behaviors because they
Mm.
fall below what I think is acceptable. And at the same time, I think people need to be given an opportunity to make right.
But like the mistakes you make, like you're able to apologize for it. You think about it, you know. So like you gotta give people time sometimes instead of just like being like defensive, being like, ah, you ain't shit, or like, oh, this person sucks, this person's a bad person.
He's not very tech savvy at all. He's one of those uncles, but he
Hmm.
understands. He sees what's happening. He's like, oh, I don't understand what everybody's doing, canceling each other on here. He's got a real raspy voice, and
Mm-mm.
he talks like that. And he's like, you can't just throw people away like they're garbage.
It's so hard. Like there's just so many good guys, good men. So and I think you have to be willing to look for it. Like you have to be willing to look for the good in people. Um, and then I think that's when like when you're looking for it and you acknowledge that, more of that good comes out of them, if that makes sense.
It does. It
Um,
does. In fact, I want
yeah.
to dig in a little bit. I think right before we started recording, and I think you alluded to it right in the beginning too, that it's kind of a tough time to be a man. I mean,
Hmm.
it's a tough time to be a human in general. The world's crazy,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, it's
uh,
pretty crazy.
but especially with some of the cultural dialogue and social narratives around men, and in a lot of cases, rightfully so. Historically speaking,
Hmm.
there's a lot of evidence that would suggest that men haven't been showing up great over
Hmm.
the generations, but
Hmm.
especially now, just mentioning how difficult it is. I think I like that the standards are being raised for
Hmm.
all of us as men. That's something that I endeavor to do for myself and the company that I keep. But I think it's important that we make sure that as we're raising that standard, that we're not losing people on their journey to rise up to that position,
Hmm.
because it's just like anything else. Like we're not born into this world knowing how to live at a high standard that way. And not
Hmm.
everybody, I think a lot of things got to be taken into consideration: the way people are raised, who they're raised around, what they witness growing up. There's so many things to take into consideration. And I think what I found in working with so many different men is by the time we become adults, whether it's 18, 21, whatever that line is that we draw, there's this expectation that these young men should already know how to be
Hmm.
the highest standard of men that we're
Hmm.
asking for, especially now. And I
Hmm.
wonder, just from your perspective, because you're a woman who has spent a lot of time around men, especially. How old are you right now as we're recording this?
23, gonna turn 24 soon.
Okay, so pretty recently, right? Like you spent a lot of time
Yes, yeah.
around these young men that I see having such a hard time transitioning into the responsibility of adulthood because of what
Mm.
seems like just the high standard and not knowing exactly
Hmm.
how to rise into that.
Mm. Mm. That's a good point. Like, um, and I it's interesting. Okay, so like for example, like in uni or high school, and it goes both ways. Like there are things that, you know, girls have done that are like not that great, things that guys have done that are not that great. But then like when I kind of look at it like objectively, um, it's like, oh, yeah, what he or she did was like really not good, you know, but both he and she are like trying to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And they're when you look at them, it's like, oh no, they're like generally good people with good intentions. It's just this is the sticky point in our lives where we're learning, and it's probably not going to happen again because they have good intentions and they want to be better.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when we're in it now, we can't think about like, you know, like everybody's cutting people out of their lives so quickly nowadays. I don't know if you're feeling that. I'm feeling that,
So much
you
so,
know, because
yeah.
there's this like hustle culture, but I'm like, uh, and I used to kind of be like that too, but it takes time to develop. So when you meet somebody and you see, oh, okay, they have really good foundations, like for example, like okay, you're super loyal and considerate, right? Those are values that I really value. And you might not like, you might not be like fully grown in your own skin yet, but you will be. And it might take 5 years for everyone to see that. But like the mistakes you make, like you're able to apologize for it. You think about it, you know. So like you gotta give people time sometimes instead of just like being like defensive, being like, ah, oh, you ain't shit, or like, oh, this person sucks, this person's a bad person. And sometimes it's hard to do that, but it's just something that I do. And it seems to be the case that men's value increases as they get older
Mm.
for some reason. I don't know if you see that
Yep.
or if that's just me. Yes. So like me knowing that, like I'm quite um patient,
Hmm.
or just like looking forward to it. It's just like you're watching a flower grow. Like I'm looking forward for you to like bloom. Like I see that in a lot of my guy friends. And so of course there is like a line, you know, like if you do something absolutely ridiculous that's like, you know, against the law, and like that's a line, you know, you know.
For
But I'm talking
sure.
about like things before the line, like maybe if you say something stupid or whatever.
Oh no, I agree with you 100%. And I think it's refreshing to hear not just a woman, but somebody your age who's having that type of just sensibility about yourself. Because cancel culture is so rampant right now, and it's
Yeah, it's wild.
I have an uncle who he's not very tech savvy at all. He's one of those uncles, but he
Mhm.
understands. He sees what's happening. He's like, oh, I don't understand what everybody's doing, canceling each other on here. He's got a real raspy voice, and
Mm-mm.
he talks like that. And he's like, you can't just throw people away like they're garbage. He's like,
Mm.
people are not disposable. And I think what I and it's not a very clear line, but at least not for me. I think things need to be taken into consideration. But there's a point where there's certain things that I won't make excuses for. I won't condone certain behaviors because they
Mm.
fall below what I think is acceptable. And at the same time, I think people need to be given an opportunity to make right things that they've done wrong. And
Mm.
with canceling of people, it's like we shortcut that whole system
Mm.
of restorative relations, and we just go
Mm.
immediately to exile. Right? Like that's
Yeah.
granted, I get it. You know, some certain things are of a high magnitude and have significant consequences for people. So
Mm.
we can't just overlook them. I'm not
Mm.
saying we give people a pass for some of
Mm.
these
Mm.
things that they do, but I think there's a little bit more care and consideration that needs to be given on an individual level because of what I see on my side of things. I try to be an
Mm.
advocate for both sides because I understand.
Yeah.
Like, and I was telling you before we recorded, I have a son and I have a daughter, so I can
Yes.
really understand the polarity of this.
Yeah.
Um, and it's tricky. So I just think I always encourage curiosity
Hmm.
first, the willingness to
Hmm.
understand before making
Hmm.
these judgments or decisions too quickly.
Yeah,
So
for sure. No, yeah, no, 100% for sure. And like there are things that like I don't I don't condone, obviously, and like it's like things that I wouldn't do or like things that like my personal guy friends, they lines that they wouldn't cross. But at the same time, like we're so young and like I don't know how to say it, like I'm I might not agree with it and I might not like it, but I think I'm pretty good at like not hating somebody. And I think if you mess up big and you genuinely think about it and you know like you take action so you never do that again, I think you should be given that chance no matter how gross the thing that you did was. And I and I believe in doing that because like in Japanese culture, there's a saying, have a big utsuwa. So big container, the bigger your container is, the more water you can fill, meaning the more accepting you are. And that's sort of a principle that I live by. So, you know, like forgiving. you know, try to be as forgiving as possible. And it's not like an easy thing, but I'm not. I think people should have second chances
Yeah.
as long as you take the appropriate actions so that it is a mistake and not a repeatable thing.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's really good to hear that from someone coming from your generation. Sometimes I start to feel like the old guy these days.
No,
And I just
no.
imagine the world that you and your friends and your contemporaries are growing up in. It's very different. I have a younger brother who's 6 years younger than me, and he
Mm,
he can't remember what life was. I'm like one of the last in my family who can remember what it was like before the internet. And he doesn't even remember
mm,
any of that. And I'm sure you don't either. So
mhm.
to to just think about the type of world that y'all are growing up in, it's really refreshing to hear somebody who's taking just a more curious approach like you are.